Hey everybody, welcome back. Yeah, we had a fun show last night. We got a fun show tonight, and I have to thank everybody because we did hit that big milestone, 7,500 subscribers to the channel. So I just wanted to thank you all once again for for enjoying what we do here on the channel and subscribing. And if you ring the bell and highlight it or whatever, you'll always get every single notification when we launch a show, whether it's live or recorded, like we did earlier today with the Jesse Lonergan interview at 3 o'clock. So do that. You won't be disappointed. You'll get more content in your YouTube, and it'll be better for all of us. But tonight we're going to be talking with collector Tom Perreira, and he's I've kind of characterized him as a Human Torch collector. I saw Marcus was shouting "Flame on" before the before anything got started, and he's in the chat letting everybody know what he's here for. But maybe I mischaracterized a little bit, but we're going to find out when we talk to Tom. So let me bring him into the show and welcome Tom. Hey, how you doing, Tom?
Great. Great to be here, Bill. After seeing so many of these interviews, it's great to be part of one. So thanks for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's your name is one that I'd seen on CAF, frequently over the last few years, and it's funny. It's like you bought a piece of art from Brian Hitch. Honestly, it was one of the pieces that I really liked looking at, even though it's going to get bought one day. It's stuff like that a nice splash page kind of thing, and you kind of get a little sad when you send stuff like that out. But when I did, I was like, oh, this is probably a good time to see if you would be interested in hopping on and talking about your collection. So it all works out.
Yeah, thanks.
And I like you don't have a dueling dealers backdrop, but you have the beginnings of one by lining up some artwork there.
Yeah. So what I do there is I don't have it's to frame everything is. So in my office, my little office here, I have like stands, so I can just change that. I change it out all the time. So when I'm working, I can just swing around, and when I take a break,
Be reminded of what you have. So you don't put stuff on the wall then, right? Is it
a little bit, yeah, here and there, but primarily it's in my living room. In the main areas, it's like fine art, regular paintings and so forth. But bedroom, I have some, and then as I say, I do line these up in my office as well.
Nothing wrong with that. But those are more like a stand. Is that what you have?
Oh yeah, yeah. It's just a simple paper stand. As I say, I just swap out art all the time, and it's a good thought. Probably like, dude, I'm doing work and I need a break, and I'm like a writer's block or something. I just swing around and just take a look at the art.
Awesome. I should do that. I don't. That's the thing when you frame stuff, it's near impossible to swap anything out from those pieces, right? But when I early on, I found these like clip frames, right? And I think a couple of the pieces like the Hulk with pearls that everybody jokes about, and the Dueling Dealers cover that we have there, those are in those clip frames. And so it's kind of cool. I mean, literally there's two clips on either end, and there's a piece of masonite, the art, and then glass. So they're easy to flip out. But even when I did that, I still don't change them out often enough.
Yeah. Well, everybody, I know it's one thing I always see is interesting is how many people are like purely portfolio collectors, and others frame everything. And it's interesting to see how different people approach their displaying their collection.
Yes, and sorry, I was getting a phone call that it was an emergency. Sorry, but no, exactly. I get it, and I think that as collectors, we have that as a standard quandary, right? Should we frame it? It kind of stinks when you put stuff in a portfolio and you don't look in it as often as you should, right? Because I think I'm always kind of coming across pieces that I forgot I had, right? And so it does kind of stink that we own a lot of beautiful pieces of art, and we don't get to look at them often. So what you're doing there is at least you're cycling through it. It's a reminder to change it out, and that's a pretty smart approach.
Yeah.
Marcus says phone call from the bear. No, it was not Marcus. But Tom, we're here to talk about you tonight. So tell me a little bit about how you got started collecting original comic art, and even more importantly, like what was that first piece and why did you choose to pick it up?
Sure. And so like pretty much every comic art collector, I read comics as a kid. I was pretty much into the mainstream titles in Marvel and DC. And so originally for me, it was just the only thing I could do is go to the local drugstore, whatever, buy comics off the rack. Then as I got a little bit older, I was able to find, there was this thing, back issues. I could buy back issues. And in this, where I live, there was this little hole in the wall place where a guy sold really odd hours, and he sold back issues. And I used to go in there and buy back age, Silver Age things that I had not read before. And one day I look up, and behind his counter, he had a page of original art. And it was the first time I was like, really, I didn't even think much about it. And it was a Steranko Nick Fury page.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, I was like, but the one thing he had, and of course, I kicked myself today. But I should have bought it, but I didn't really. That wasn't my collecting hobby at the time, and I don't think it was that expensive either. But it just got the mind working. There's this thing called this is original comic art. I didn't even realize it was for sale. So, and then I used to go to small shows around. So at least put it in the back of my head. And I used to go to some small comic shows. Then that was the next stage, from finding back issues to start to go to some of the local shows here in New England. And the same thing would happen. There was a guy I used to buy a lot of Silver Age stuff from because he had really good prices and a good selection. And then he had behind him one page of art, and it was a flash. It was a flash page. I believe it was probably a Dick Dillon page, as my recollection was. And so I said, "Oh, there's another page." But again, there was no comic art dealers, when I started going. And so I was buying all those Silver Age books. So then I decided, I think I am going to start to look at this, because I went to a show in Boston, and for the first time, and this is going back many years, for the first time, there were a couple guys, that's what they sold, was original comic art. It wasn't really just stacks of art. And I said, well, I'm going to dip my toe in the water and buy a page. And I was looking through, and I wanted something inexpensive because, that age, I had a very limited budget for that, for the collector.
I mean, what year, or
I'm going to say that was okay. So the first page was probably around early 90s.
Okay.
And it was probably right around 1990, and it was and I actually put it as the first thing that we'll take a look at, just because of that. It was a Spectacular Spider-Man page by Sal Buscema, and it had a lot of action. Spider-Man was one of my favorite characters, and it was $40. And so I thought, that's a pretty reasonable price, because if I was buying it, that would be like a couple Silver Age books I might buy instead. So I ended up purchasing that, and yeah, there it is.
Might as well show it, right? If we're going to talk about it.
So there it is. Yeah. So it was from Spectacular Spider-Man 212. I think the villain was called Vengeance, is my recollection. And yeah, I thought it was a great action page. Might be the only Sal Buscema page. Ironically, it was my first and probably last page by, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, so that led to me, and again, originally my collection grew very slowly, because there wasn't really much of an online ability to buy art online. It was fairly limited. And
well, we're talking around 1990, right? So it's I mean, do you even have internet on anything at that point?
Right, exactly. So there wasn't, it was probably in the late 90s where so my collection grew slowly, because it would be only when I went to a show, I'd pick up a piece here and there. And I think it was probably like to the mid 90s, to mid to late 90s, when eBay, I started to use eBay, and there was a whole new world for me. I could buy these things online. And I would say at that time, eBay was the online market for original comic art. I do remember because I used to read the comic buyer's guide, and they would have those ads in the back, but they didn't have any picture. They were just like a list of pages. And every once in a while, I'd say, let me go out, dig out the book, see if I have it, and see but I never bought through that. So there wasn't really a lot of, other than in person, there was very little opportunity to buy art. So my collection grew very slowly initially, and it only became when there was a higher online presence. That's when my collection grew more rapidly. And it's funny, because I've come full circle. As I've gotten older, I have less stamina and patience for big comic conventions and shows, so I buy almost entirely online now, which was, you know, completely the change from my original.
Yeah, it was a challenge at that point. But I mean, back to this first page, though, you know, by Sal Buscema, were you a fan of Sal's work? Were you a Spidey,
No, it was
reader?
primarily, I did like Sal Buscema's work. Actually,
Mhm.
a comic book I liked in that day was, I don't know if people remember, it was like Nova, the original one,
Yeah,
and I really liked his art on that. So I did like his art. I mean, I don't think it was my favorite artist, but I did like his art. But this page was less driven by the artist than it was about the layout of the page, the pure action, um, and the price, obviously, at the
price
time.
and just,
I was,
and you wanted to get that first purchase out of the way, right?
exactly, exactly. You know, so.
Well,
Uh,
I can't say that we've talked to anybody whose first purchase was a Sal Buscema page. And Marcus might correct me because he seems to remember everything we talk about on here. But I can't say that that's something that I recall. But that no, that but that's cool. I mean, the idea that you'd seen art a few times, at shops and then at cons, and then you just decided one way or another you got to take that plunge. I mean, a lot of people, more that they see it and they go after it the first time, right? It's not like they but you had kind of a measured approach. It kept turning up one at a time,
right.
and eventually you had to pick one up. But that's good. You took the one piece away from the guy that he had, so he had to go out and find a replacement.
Mhm. Yeah. Oh, no, no, that one, no, that
That
the
one was a
Buscema
different
page,
one.
that was
That
the
was from a
first
stack.
person I had seen who actually
Had
who
more,
was
that's right.
specifically dealing in original art. And it wasn't like a very fancy, it was just like a table with like 3 or 4 stacks of pages that I would be, flipping through. And that one I came across, and it was the first, really the first dealer. I couldn't tell you who he was. I can't
In
remember.
the mid '90s, even into the late '90s, it was kind of there were a lot of different people who I don't even recall who they were, or didn't speak to them. I think the first time I saw original comic art was at where were we? Like Chicago Wizard World, maybe. And it probably would have been around '96. And I didn't buy any art that day, at that show. But I remember stacks of art, like not even in bins, right? They just
Right.
had flat stacks of art
Right.
on the
Exactly.
table. And the thing was, it was so unapproachable, right? Because you don't know there, I don't even know if they had a back wall, right? So all it is a table full of paper, and how do it's not like going up to a long box and flipping through it. I
Mhm.
mean, that's probably why like dealers wisened up and started using bins and things just to make it so you could like look at what was there. Because I don't know, just the idea of shuffling through a stack of paper just wasn't appealing, not knowing really anything about it. And like,
Yeah.
how do you handle it? What do how is it priced? There's no way they put stickers on these things, and I never would even thought about them writing a price on the back, or and that was probably the most common thing in
Right.
pencil.
Yeah. I think that, I do recall that you'd think that that would start me like, oh, I got that first piece, and but it didn't. I mean, as I say, it was really not until the late '90s that I started to collect more, more art. It was very slow initially. And, because I still had that interest in collecting comics as well.
Hmm.
I don't anymore. I haven't bought a comic, I mean, a back issue in years. It's been pretty much, entirely original art. But at the time, I still had my hand both in still collecting Silver Age books and some Golden Age as well.
Right. Well, I mean, it's the story of many a collector, right? Eventually they, even for me, I haven't read consistently in, I don't want to say 15 years, but it probably is that. I don't know, around the time uh, when Grant Morrison's run on the new X-Men ended, I think I stopped reading. So that, regularly going to even to the local comic shop. I moved a little further away from the city,
Mhm.
and the next thing you know, all I'm really focused on at that point, is comic art, and buying from dealers and all that sort of thing. And I kind of never looked back after that, which kind
Yeah.
of stinks. But even now today, I mean, my closest comic shops are probably a 45-minute drive where I live in Florida. So
Mhm.
it's just not conducive to reading comic books, and they are pretty expensive nowadays.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I did actually subscribe to the Marvel Unlimited, where you can
Hmm.
read digital books, but of course, there's a lag to that. It's not like you can read the books coming out, as they're out. There's like a lag in terms of when they post them, but it allows a more affordable way to, whenever I feel like it. Then I don't have to also dig out comics. Because I remember my old days, like the long boxes of comics I had. So I'd like to read that comic, and goodness knows where it was. Looking through all the boxes trying to find the title I wanted to. So.
Right. Yeah. No. No. I think I got up to about 7 long boxes before I started selling them. But yeah, that's it is what it is, right? Art's I can have 400 pieces of art in a small cabinet over there or whatever, and instead of having 7 or 8 long boxes that you're having to move from home to home if you're if you do that a little bit, and none of that's fun. Art much easier to navigate and travel with.
Absolutely.
And Marcus, you are actually right. The tent sale that they have is this upcoming weekend. Kazra and Mr. Dan Goodwin and I are all going to the tent sale and to the Ocala Comic Con. So I'm actually diving into to some comics this weekend, which I don't normally get to do. So at what point do you feel like the scales kind of tipped from comics to art? I mean, so you never really caught the the bug, but you were buying. So was it was there a turning point where you decided art was it? And
I would probably say the early 2000s. And in fact, you'll see that's kind of when I got much more interested in comic art, and I wanted to learn more about it. And that's how I learned about CAF originally was. So I would probably say like in the early 2000s when I wanted to more seriously, purchase that. And I there was an old Yahoo group. What was it? Comic Art L.
Comic Art L. Yeah,
exactly. So I got on there, and there would be a daily digest. When I got home from work, I would read because I wanted to learn. I didn't know much about the hobby in terms of the ins and outs of it. I knew comics, I knew art, but in terms of how people collected and so forth. So I used to read the daily digest every day of that, and a stream of messages. And so I remember there would be certain people, and I got to know who the major collectors were at that time, and they started to post these art days. Art day would be the subject line, and it would have a link in many cases to CAF. And so I started to look at the art, and as I started to get a little more, I was like, well, let me open up a gallery myself. And I don't have much to put up originally, but then once I would say, I think probably the word spurred on was like 03, 04, 05 in that range where I started to buy more art. And I'd say that was probably the range where it started to tip much more to original art than it was to. I hadn't stopped buying comics at that point, but that's where the scales kind of tipped to original art.
Right. Yeah, the Comic Art L days were a lot of fun. I didn't get the digest. I got them as they happened. So, my inbox would usually have, whatever. On a slow day, there might be 3 or 4 emails, and on a busy day, there could be 20. Right.
Yeah.
But that was.
There was some lively.
I learned the most about. Well, that was my way of learning everything I had, a foundation for how to be an art collector. That's where I met. Will Gabrielle early on, Berkey, Tim Townsend was in there, Gary Land. I mean, all of the people who had been collecting for 10 or 15 years, before getting into that list were in there. And, I remember asking them some of the dumbest questions about, is it okay to have masking tape, keeping my DPS together and stuff like that. And just, and then there's the dumbest replies coming back to me, and so I learned when to ask questions and when not. But the thing was, everybody was so knowledgeable, and it was really the only place where that kind of discourse was actually happening, right? I mean, we didn't have Facebook, and there was no other real, means of communicating like that. And it served a really important purpose. I think that they grew to, the list probably was at least at 2,500 people on it at one point. And that's crazy. For that kind of that period. But even going back to your statement about eBay was the place to buy comic book art. I think I bought, in those first 5 years of collecting, more than 50% of the things that I added to my collection came from eBay.
Yeah. And I think that, well, and again, on Comic Art L2, well, eBay, it's amazing they have a flow. Now I'm trying to remember the last time I bought a piece of art from eBay, but I still have the alerts though. I have a torch alert and like different alerts for the original, filtered for the original comic art. So I do get I'll get them. Unfortunately, most of the time it's really not worth my time. Some of the stuff on there,
Right.
but sometimes the odd piece does pop up on there that's a really quality a quality piece. Actually, I probably did have bought at least one or two in the last year or so. And then back to Comic Art L, I like to your point is there wasn't, again, there wasn't a lot of areas for communication. There's a lot of important good announcements that came out, and I did benefit from that. Not only in terms of one of the things I learned a lot about is the commissioning and how folks,
Hmm.
went about that, because I was completely ignorant to that. I was just originally just published pages, and that's what I wasn't even thinking commission. And like for example, I remember a Gene Colan was doing. And that's how I learned. Like he didn't have a website, or was it just somebody sent an email. Gene Colan, somebody who knew him. Gene Colan is,
Yeah, I think
accepting
it was the guy.
retirement.
I'm forgetting his name right now, but yeah, he was the guy that worked with him and helped him
Right.
out at cons. And I got a commission from him during that spell as well. He did a
Yeah.
lot of commissions for people on the Comic Art L.
So I have a Human Torch commission in my CAF from Gene Colan at the time, and so otherwise I would have never known about that. So.
So the
Yeah,
commission from Gene was one of the first commissions you ever got. Then that's a great place to start.
yeah.
Yeah, I think I got a Storm commission from him. I don't even know why. So I just picked it. He did a great job with it. That was
Well,
the thing. Yeah.
the good thing about it is he very they were very and he was one of my favorite artists.
Hmm.
And he very rarely had ever done the Fantastic Four at all. So I was very interested to see his interpretation of you think of Daredevil, you think of Howard the Duck, you think of you know
Captain America. I mean,
yeah,
Iron Man.
exactly.
Yeah,
And I always think of Daredevil as what pops into my head when I think of Gene Colan.
sure.
But so it was really, I was really anticipating that, because I wanted to see what his interpretation of because I've never really seen him. I think there probably was a couple of published pages here or there, but I didn't recall ever seeing his work on Fantastic Four.
I'm trying to picture how Gene Colan would draw the Thing, and I can't. There's got to be one on CAF, right? But I can't picture.
Yeah, I think there is. I think I have seen at least one with I think they're all in the Fantastic car and the torch flying above, and I did see one. I did see one page, but yeah, that's one of those artists like that you look at and immediately that it's Colan. So.
Right. No, he's like Infantino from that era, right? You can
Yeah.
tell their work immediately, especially the pencil work. It's so unique and unlike any other artist of that era, or today, yesterday, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. The thing that appealed to me, I think, most about his work was just those action sequences, the exaggerated, poses, and you could almost just feel that from panel to panel, that action. You could sense it. I just not everybody can achieve that. But I think he was a master at that.
Yeah, every time we pull up artwork from either a CAF update, or we're talking about Gene's work, or maybe there's a piece on Heritage, but it's his panel layouts. By and large, he never stuck with a standard grid, right? There was always some jagged angle that nobody else would have the nerve to try to do. It seemed like that was his bent, right? Like a third of this book has to have non-standard panel structures one way or another, or he's not going to be happy. But his work fit perfectly into them, and I think that it influenced his style and the way he did his anatomy and his action, because of that. He didn't feel limited. You think about a lot of artists would just break the border, right, with a foot or a hand or something, but he just literally made the border change to fit what the action that he wanted to show. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. I mean, again, the Comic Art L launched a lot of collectors, path, in the hobby, and that's cool. I had no idea. I mean, so did you comment a lot? I guess I don't.
No, I was a lurker.
Okay.
I always had that fear I was going to make a fool of myself. I wish I had more ask some more questions, but I was more a lurker and just learned a lot. I probably posted here and there every once in a while, but not very regularly. But again, I probably learned the most about the hobby from that, from
Hmm.
that group.
No, well, I don't know where. I think that, well, who knows where I had a friend in collecting. When I bought my first piece of art, I had somebody who was with me, and he bought a couple pieces of art too. So I probably would have stayed collecting, but the Comic Art L really kind of, gave me a community to kind of share that with. I got to know like Mark Hay from Splash Page Art through there,
Mhm.
and a lot of the people who are still close friends of mine, were from that group. But collectors today, if they don't stumble into Facebook or or CAF or something like that, uh, collect it could be a lonely hobby until you find somebody else that shares your fun in that. I mean, when was the first time that that you met another fellow collector? Was it at a con or at a
Yeah,
shop
I
or?
think it was at a show, and somebody else was looking through the art, and we just started to talk. And again, that was because I didn't personally know anybody. Like, to your point, I didn't know anybody personally who collected comic art. I knew fellow comic collectors, but nobody personally. So I, didn't have anybody to bounce anything off of or talk to about. So yeah, that would be cons would be the first. And I remember I was looking through Paul Ryan, who lived in the New England area, so he used to go to shows here locally. And I was picking out some of his pages. He had a couple, again, stacks of art, and I had one stack put aside, but it was just I had already looked through it. And somebody goes, "Did you just buy that whole stack of art?" I said, "No, no. These 3 pages here are the ones I'm buying." But then we struck up a conversation, and and there was another good time when I met 2 or 3 collectors who I did keep in touch a little bit afterwards. It was Steranko. So Steranko was appearing at a local show, and what
Mhm.
he did was he wasn't doing sketching or selling art, but he had books and things that he was selling. But what he did was there was a group of us like in a semicircle around him, and he just stood there and held court, talked about
He
his
does that.
hobby, and we were just bouncing questions off him. Um, and uh, and the thing that led, because he was so interesting in many ways, that afterwards as we walked away, and like started to talk, and well, let's go talk about what we just heard. And so yeah, so I would say cons were the place where I first met fellow original, at least face to face, as opposed to just through emails or online.
Mhm. Well, I don't. I guess I really wasn't sure, but yeah, you've almost been on CAF for 21 years. I was just looking at the profile. You joined in November of 2004.
Oh,
That's yeah. Your ID number is 2,995. I mean, anybody under 10,000 is doing, has been on the site a long time, but yeah, you're under 3,000, so
yeah,
that's pretty awesome. Yeah, it's it it's a testament to how long CAF has been around to see somebody who's been on the site for that long. But no, that's awesome. You didn't post art right away either. I think even though you joined, your first post was around like 2006 or something. So
yeah. It was more about, as I say, when I originally, it was like the art day thing, and I would go and I used it more or less just to see things, see art I had never seen before. And so yeah, it was initially as a way for me to look at other art, and because I
mhm.
could, as I say, again, it was at that point, even though I had bought a couple pieces several years earlier, it was still a learning experience for me. So, and I've enjoyed the site all this time, and seen it evolve in different ways. Um, but yeah, no, well, I would say this is, I don't think, and I'm just saying this sincerely, I don't think I would enjoy this hobby as much if I couldn't share my art with fellow
Mhm.
collectors and see their art. If I was just doing it in my own little, my own little world in my house and just looking at my art, and I don't think it would be nearly as enjoyable a hobby. I'd still enjoy it, but it wouldn't rise to the level it is now.
No, I'm with you. I don't know how like fine art collectors, do it. I mean, I guess maybe if they're at a certain level, everybody knows what Picasso's and
Mhm.
Rembrandts and what and Van Goghs look like, and you can picture them. But I mean, like modern fine art collectors, and yeah, it's like they probably have circles and they know gallerists and those sorts of things, but it's definitely different. I mean, I think that is one of the best parts about the hobby. That's why CAF was built, right? It was, I
Sure,
built it because I
sure.
wanted to see other people's collections,
Right.
because I was learning, right, at the same time, and it really was, for me, really beneficial to get to see, because I was a commission collector early on, and that those were the things that nobody posted, right? You could only ever see like published stuff, and here
Mhm.
I was happy commissioning artists through eBay, and going to artists and having them to do take home commissions and stuff, and that was what I was into, and you just never got to see any of that anywhere. And even Facebook groups and things like that really didn't come about until like whatever 15 years ago. So there just wasn't any kind of click out there that had image sharing that you could really get into and appreciate. So no, that's cool. I'm glad you found CAF in that way. But so since then, I mean, is there getting back into a little bit about your collecting? So clearly you've commissioned artists, you bought a lot of published pieces, but at this point in time in collecting, I mean, is there one thing over another? Do you enjoy commissioning artists or getting something at a show, or buying published pages, and is there any piece or pieces or artists whom you're still trying to get a piece from?
Yeah, well, first of all, I would say that I think I publish pages. Um, I still buy more of, and I think
Mhm.
it's more about capturing that the nostalgia of the books, but it's also immediate. Like, okay, there's a page, I see it, I can have it, I'll have it. Commissions, um, I think it's great. The great thing about commissions is it's there's the suspense and the surprise to it that you don't get with a published page, obviously. But the thing
Right.
about commissions is obviously in many cases they take quite a bit longer to get. If and I have to say that in more than one case never get. And uh, so I like to commission. I have but it's always a balancing act because, like anybody else, I have a budget for this sort of stuff, and so if I do a published page or two this month, probably wouldn't do a commission. And a lot of it too is who's available and pricing. There's a lot of factors that go into it, obviously, but I would probably say I'm doing maybe 2/3 published to a third commission. Well, I wouldn't say published. I would say 2/3 done pages. So some are unpublished pages. That might be
Mhm.
I might see a nice sketch that's up on
That's been
the dealer
pre-done, right?
site.
So you're not commissioning the artist, but maybe you're
Right.
picking up something somebody else
Yeah,
commissioned, or the artist.
exactly.
Yeah.
Because I do have. Yeah, that's another thing with CAF is like all the advertisers you have, the dealers and so forth. I've pretty much gotten on every subscriber list for them.
Right.
And so, pretty much every day there's at least one or two art reps or dealers that I get emails from, general emails. And so I'll often scan the pages and see what's what. And so I'll buy some pages that are not published. I'll certainly have no aversion to buying unpublished pages um, that appeal to me. In terms of yeah, in terms of artists, the interesting one is the one thing that has eluded me, and I've come close, and I kick myself for it to this day, is I want a Kirby FF page, but obviously they're so darn expensive.
They are.
And
They're
I'm a
not
little
getting any
picky. It's
more
not just
affordable.
yeah, it's not just. There's nothing wrong with that. I get it, but um, I also want a page that features the torch. So it's not just like I want something. And it was funny because I'm going to say uh, better part of maybe 15 to 20 years ago, there was a Kirby torch page on eBay. And I hemmed and hawed. It was a lot of money, even at that time. And I said, can I make this work? And I hesitated. And I even looked at it the last couple of hours and I didn't buy
It
it.
was an auction, or was it like a
Yeah,
buy and sell?
It was an eBay auction.
Okay.
And it actually, though, it ended up like where it was the last day is close to where it wound up. It didn't have like, I know sometimes they have those bidding frenzies at the end and the thing shoots up dramatically, but this didn't. And so I look at that and I say, boy, I wish I had. I regret to this day not buying that page. So that's probably the one page I would still be because I've had other major, like again, I have a Buscema Human Torch page. I had John Buscema, so I have a lot of really John Byrne and significant
Right. The
artists that I
Kirby
always
is the elusive one. Well, that's the one you almost have to get though. I mean,
yeah
that's that I know that's not easy now,
yeah
but uh I mean, if you want to feel like a completist Human Torch collector, you got to get something from Kirby. And he's got it, and he can't be, Johnny, right? He's got to be the Human Torch in it.
well,
Uh,
I would say yes. I prefer for the right Johnny Storm piece. I might consider it. Um, but yeah, I would say that I haven't given up on it. I'm thinking that maybe the stars will align at the right time where I'm in a position to find what I really like and to purchase. So
mhm.
I think it's also good to have that kind of, use the term grail, that you're trying to reach, you're trying to look for it. And but that's part. Well, I mean, that's the great. I mean, for anybody who's collected, and I've collected different things in my life. It's not been comic books. To be honest, I've dribbed and drabbed at different types of collectibles over the years,
Such
and
as like
uh, art pottery of all
art.
things.
Okay.
Um, and I did coins at one time, but I got out of that very quickly. And what else? And portrait art.
Hmm.
I have a number of pieces of I pick up at I used to go to like local auction houses, and you get these cheap, well done pieces, like
Sure.
$30, $40, in general estate auctions and things like that. So, but really, the attainment is one thing. I think it's the hunt that's really the fun part of it, right? I mean, looking and like again, when you talk about I collect the Human Torch as a character, it's just like looking for that page and oh, here's my want list alert. There's a Human Torch page, and I look and wow, that's a great page. It's just that ongoing hunt for the pieces is so much part of the fun of collecting. Why anybody collects, really, I think.
No, that's very true. I pay close attention to my want list alerts as well. You just never know. I had somebody email me today that saw, yeah, I like Bill Willingham Elementals, and so somebody emailed me a link to a page. The kind of sucky part about eBay these days is when you go to like the detail of the sale, they
Yeah,
used to always have the kind of nested path of where it was. Like it would say collectibles, comics,
right, right,
comic
right.
art, right? That's not there anymore.
No, I didn't
And
even know that. Yeah.
and it's kind of a pain in the butt because it made it really easy to do a search. Like if you followed an eBay link from a mailing, then
Mhm.
you're already in original comic art. You can do a search and you can keep it in there. Now it's like wide open. It's almost impossible. But the thing that was frustrating about it is I have Willingham and Elementals as two separate keywords in eBay. I didn't get emailed by eBay about it, and it wasn't a Bill Willingham Elementals page anyway. But the point being is that I didn't get alerted by it. Somebody else brought it to my attention, and my feeling is it probably wasn't underneath the original that category, right? Because your
Right,
keyword
right, right.
searches can be based on the 3984, which is the eBay category for original comic art. It could have been up in the comics, one level up higher, and I would never
Yeah,
have seen it. So eBay's kind of frustrating in that way. But I've always been wanting to just rant about that one thing. The nested path was so easy to
yeah,
navigate, and they took it all out. I don't know why. They're trying to like make everything a little bit more vanilla there, and I think that some of the changes in their design have led to their not being as a useful platform anymore, for at least for comic art sales.
yeah. Well, eBay's
Knockoff Agent Pottery maybe is doing pretty well, right? But I don't know. Uh, but gosh, that was a long tangent. But yeah, that's right, Marcus. Maybe I should. I used to. So well, we should look at some artwork. We've been talking about all this, but the thing is, I really hope you get a Kirby, torch page because, yeah, I mean, I think it's always good to have goals, and like you said, that having goals always means that there's always something new to look forward, to, because when you're looking for that, you're bound to find something, else that'll pop up that it might be just it's a tangent. Maybe you end up going over to a dealer's site because they have a Kirby torch page, but the next thing you realize, it's like they have a really nice, Buscema page that you like more, or whatever, something
yeah,
different, something more modern, and because you have a Brian Haberlin painting in your in
yeah. I just got that. Yeah,
which is, yeah, I mean, that thing is stunning. And, you know, so you just never know what you're going to find. There's always another beautiful piece of art, even if it doesn't match, like, you know, what your want list alerts were, or, you know, or what that grail piece was. Art's art, right? And, you know, there's
Mhm.
always going to be something else that you want to own.
Well, I can assure you that if and when I do get the Curry page, it'll go right up on CAF.
Good, good. But yeah, it's funny. Yeah, I'm in your calf right now, and the most recent piece you posted was the Human Torch versus Captain America by Fred Hembeck. And
Yes, yeah,
I was almost going to try to work that into the show intro video, and then I just went with the Human Torch color piece. But I like that image a lot. You know, with the cityscape behind them, and you
mhm,
know, a fireball hitting the shield. I mean, it's
yeah,
perfect.
yeah. I've had that page for a while. It's funny because I would say this is I still have a lot of pieces. It's like that I have not put up on CAF. It's just for lack of the time and putting it in the scanner and getting it done. So here and there, I because a number of the pages that I post, I say, like, let's say in the last 6 months, some of them I've had for a long time. They're not recent, recent purchases. But the Fred Hembeck one, I remember when I got that from him, he said that it was actually a depiction of the Torch battling the Acrobat, which was in Strange Tales. When they were going to
Oh,
reintroduce Captain America, and Marcus made this comment on my page, recognizing this, was that they used they in Strange Tales. They had the Torch battling Captain America, a cover that would certainly sell. I mean, oh, look at that, two superheroes battling. And it turns out it was a supervillain named the Acrobat who was posing as Captain America. Yeah. And so that's how Fred described that one.
well, that's a good one. Well, Fred's he's definitely very knowledgeable about comics. I mean, he's been in the business for a very long time, but you know he's a fan, you know, and a long time reader. He knows some of the most obscure characters out there, probably from some of the more obscure storylines as well. So it doesn't surprise me that that you know he would look at this piece in that way, and it doesn't surprise me that Marcus knows
Yeah.
it as well. But again, look at this. Everybody's looking at it. This is a great. I mean, I love Fred's stuff. You know, we've had him on the channel before. I just thought this was a really cool piece. So
Yeah.
now I got to show it.
If you look at the Strange Tales cover, I forget which number it is, like 111, 112, whatever it is. It's similar to the cover, it's just reversed. So in the cover, Cap is on the left, Torch is on the right, but it's pretty comparable.
Well, congrats. Even though you got it, did you get it when it was originally drawn, or was that like a later?
Yeah, no, I think I got that when he first put it up for sale, and I bought it directly from Fred.
That's like 2009. I think
Yeah,
it said here.
it's been a
Yeah, so you've
while.
had this for 16 years, Tom.
Yeah, yeah, I
And
have,
it
yeah,
just made it. Yeah, now you do know that Comic Art Fans has an app now, so you can
yeah.
actually use your phone's you know, camera and crop it and color correct it and everything like that. So you don't have to throw everything on a. I mean, I'll be honest, I still scan everything because
Mm.
I just think that's a better representation of the art that you have. You just get better detail out of it. But there's a lot of people who don't have the same kind of patience and consideration or care
Yeah.
in their artworks, and they love using their phones. So it's always an option. All right, let's see. Let's get this thing going here. So first, we showed the first piece, the Sal piece.
Mhm.
So let's go ahead and see now. This is where I characterized you as Human Torch, and we
Okay.
have in the first two pieces, no Human Torch to be seen here. We have Flash, and you
Yeah.
mentioned Flash earlier as a favorite character too.
Yeah, in the Silver Age, I collected him, and I loved. If you look from what was a 105 to 174, and I think 174 is one of the best covers ever. The Carmine Infantino Flash covers of that era to me were masterpieces, and oftentimes, they would have that great. Flash had that really great Rogues Gallery. Um, so those covers sold those books, and I used to buy those as again when I was buying back issues. But I realized similarly that I would probably never. I've rarely seen an Infantino cover from that era. Um, I've seen recreations, but not actual original covers. So I knew I would probably never own one, but I was such a fan of the Flash against any cover with the Flash against his rogues. Um, I was really a fan of. So one day I was looking at in the days when I was buying comic books. which still was not that long ago, I was looking at, I think, the previews book, and I saw this cover coming up. It was by Howard Porter for Flash 220. It was the start of the Rogue. It was a Rogue's War story arc, and I saw the page, and then I remembered that Spencer Beck at the time repped Howard Porter and sold all his new art. So I was basically, as it was coming up, because what Spencer would do at that time with Porter art he put up like a preview and say, okay, you can reserve it. I don't have it yet, but you can reserve it. So when I saw this, soon after, every morning, I would take a quick look at Spencer's site to see if it was up and available. And one day it was. So I said, I immediately sent an email and said, I'd like to reserve that page, and I did. So again, this is kind of an homage to Carmine Infantino, in my mind, to my love of those covers. And I mean, what is not more appealing than a hero with all his villains on a cover? And I just like the sequence of him, like, kind of running the gauntlet, so to speak, flanked by, Trickster, Captain Cold, Heatwave, Mirror Master, Weather Wizard, and those few rats down at the bottom right. But it appealed to me on a number of levels.
Well, it clearly very memorable. A lot of people knew it was Rogue's War, from the start. But yeah, this must be one of your earliest posts on CAF, because it was added in 2005, so it's got to be right up there. But yeah, Spencer's site back then was it was always hit or miss, right? Trying to sometimes get him to communicate back with you when you were interested in something. But
yeah,
there were a lot. He had his stuff priced really well. I mean, that's probably what his problem was. There was probably just too many emails and orders coming in, that it was hard to follow up. But I got a lot of good deals from him in the early days.
Yeah, it was very, very low tech. I mean, in the sense of the site, and I think that site still is up. Obviously it's not active.
Oh yeah, I don't want anybody to complain about CAF when they can look at the artist's choice and see that it hasn't changed since 1998. But
yeah, it's a good 20th century website. And he was very low tech at the time, in the sense that it was just all email. Like, there was no automated system to order anything, or you'd send him an email, and there was a specific requirement, please list the artist, the page, blah, blah, blah. He had this like order he wanted you to.
Yeah, he had to form it and just hope you hear from him in a week.
Yeah. Then he would just send you the email back saying, yes, it's available on hold for you. And, you'd make payment at that point. So
it did get easier once he knew who you were. That's for sure. I think
you're right. Because I did buy a number of pieces from him over the years, because he did rep artists that I was kind of a fan of. So yeah. So this one again.
He had Perez. He repped John Romita Jr. early. But he had a lot of inkers. That was the thing. So there was a great variety of pencilers that he would get, because he did work with a lot of the inkers in the business, and he was strategically, in the New York area, right? So it made him very convenient to be the artist's choice, for being a rep. I mean, anybody who was trying to be a rep back then, I mean, had to be a little envious because of that. But still, it was I think back to the art I didn't buy from Spencer that I should have. But no, this is awesome. This is really nice. Let me see here. What is the next piece? Let's see. Here we go.
Oh, so we were talking about Gene Colan earlier.
Yes.
And so later on, he went to Detective Comics, and I read those comics primarily because of his art when he was. I'm trying to think when this was, but it was certainly later in his, in the very latter part of his regular penciling career. And this one, I liked because I just the way he interposed all these villains. The wording is great. I forget who wrote that issue, but I just like if you look at the the wording for this, it was also an interesting description. I think it was that Batman was reviewing. They were looking for suspects, and he was going through all his files of villains that might possibly be responsible. And so I think it's just a great splash in the way he does it. Like, in some cases it's full figure, some cases it's just a head. or Torso in the case of Clayface, Killer Croc, Crazy Quilt, like these second tier villains, Tweedledee and Tweedledum and Cavalier. So yeah, so it just appealed to me as a great splash. And again, I'm a big fan of villains in terms of multiple villains on a page, and so it checked a lot of boxes for me.
Yeah, it's a fun piece for sure. I love the composition on it, the characters, and yeah, and it's unmistakably Colin.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Bob Smith's inks on this one as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's nice. Now, let's see. Yeah, okay, so we switch over to this one. This is Dick Dillon, right?
Yeah, Dick Dillon, absolutely, with Dick Giordano inking. This gets to be where I think a lot of people are, like every age. Like you look back to comics you read and you remember, and when you see a page from it, it really appeals to you, obviously. And I remember this issue of Flash. This was the back. So there was a period of time there were Kid Flash backup stories in there, and so this one again, I remembered reading, and I think Dick Dillon is not one. He's not a name that really is at the top of a lot of people's lists in terms of really well known or well recognized. But my goodness, that man was a workhorse for DC Comics in that period. You know, he could churn out a lot of stuff because he was doing Justice League, he was doing backup stories, and so I think he was kind of an unsung hero in the DC bullpen. And this page is interesting. I just like the way it's composed because I like how you kind of got everything, all this action occurring to the right, and you're doing this vertical action, but then you'd have all that dead space, but then he's got that, a person in the middle there kind of in shock as to what's going on. So I just think it really composed well. And then there's an interesting little quirk to this page that they really, I know they probably struggled to deal with, was the action occurs from the bottom to the top, but people don't read from the bottom to the top. So if you look at the thought balloons of Kid Flash, it flows from the top to the bottom. So
that's funny.
His first, like where he's first punching the first guy, that should be his first thought, but it's actually his last. So I guess they struggle with paths. Like the action is occurring from the bottom to the top, but people don't read from the bottom to the top.
Right, exactly. They were probably like, "Doggone it, man, Dillon! He's so good." And he this was he punted on this one. This was not not the way we wanted it, but they needed the dialogue no matter what. That's funny.
So yeah, but the page itself. So I think the quirkiness of it. I actually love the composition of it. Just the way. He's got it worked where the Kid Flash is the center of action, but you've got the division of the thugs on the left and the victim on the right. So I think, yeah, and again, I think it's also just very well drawn as well.
Right, and this is from 1971, and as well.
Yeah, that was it's a great page. I started reading comics, basically.
No, I love it. I mean, Peter Rose said it's always fun seeing an original page with Flash in motion. There's a lot of cool Infantino pages, with them going into costume, they're going, from the ring and then racing, and so this is Kid Flash. I mean, all of that. It's the stuff we love about comics. Quicksilver and Marvel versus Flash and DC, but it's cool. But it's funny. I've never seen a page like that where they had the word balloons basically are patterned wrong because of the way it was drawn. But well, it happens. It's a great splash page nonetheless, right? So that's the most
you get the gist of it, the meaning comes through, what's going on in the story, so it all works in the end.
Yeah, Dan says sometimes the reader has to put in the work. That's true. Okay, so next up is something from a guy who's going to be at OAX. Actually, let me highlight this one. Dan Jurgens, penciler on this one. Yeah. And such a fun page.
Yeah,
I love this one.
So I think what appealed to me over this page is I read when it first came out. That was when I was reading New Comics, and I read Booster Gold from 1 to 25 when they first came out, and I just love the concept of this, this hero who was really in it for the glory, advertising and marketing, and he had like he had this like flashy marketing agent who follow him around everywhere and tell him, "Hey, punch that villain," let's get that on camera. And so this sequence is Jurgens has him advertising a cereal, and in fact the panels interestingly are framed like television screens of back in the day, and of course there's a lot of humor to it where he's talking up this breakfast cereal, finally takes a spoonful of it and he can't stand it, ugh at the end. So I just thought it was kind of a fun page from a comic I read. And again, that's one of the things is, again, if it's a comic I've read and I really enjoyed, it makes me more apt to buy the page.
Nostalgia, like you mentioned earlier, I mean, it plays a big part in art collecting. I mean, you can collect the art for art's sake, even in comics that you haven't read, but yeah, when you see a page that you remember, and it has certainly a little bit of humor in it, like this one does. I mean, it makes it hard to pass up, especially when you start thinking, that either if you're at a show, it's like the next guy in line might be the one that takes it, and there's a sense of immediacy sometimes in buying. Well, probably buying any collectible at the end of the day, but it's those things that we wrestle with, looking at that art and then deciding, you not to buy it, and then it's off somebody's site, a day or two later, and it is what it is. But this is a great page, though. I love it.
There's one other little thing about this one too is it's also something that's appealing to me in pages, and I have a couple of these where the whole sequence is one self-contained page. I mean, mostly you're gonna have things like a sequence go from one page to the next, or half page here. I always like when there's like a page that's so self-contained, the whole kind of sequence is all self-contained. So I like those, and I have a couple of action pages like that where like the battle is started and concluded in like 8 panels in one page or something like that. So
nope, I agree. I don't think I have a page like that actually. But anyway, no, great pickup on this one. I love Dan's work, both as a writer and as an artist. But yeah, this is pretty nice fun. Now this next one's a little bit a little different, but I know that you have other pieces by this artist in your collection. Now, this is Kyle Holtz.
Yes, I really, his art really appeals to me. I bought a lot of his pieces. I bought directly from him or his rep. It wasn't really a formal rep that had a website, but somebody was helping him out, and he had like several pieces, and I bought them all at once because they were all reasonably priced, and I got 3 or 4. I picked this one. One thing is seasonal, right? I mean, we're getting into the fall now. We're getting into that spooky season. So I thought this was the cover to Lord Pumpkin 2, which was what was it? I think it was Malibu Comics put out these, like the Nightman. He did the art for that as well. And I just this is one of those pages that you just look at it, and okay, you can put it aside. Then you look at it again, you start to see new things, and there's so much going on, so much I can't imagine how much work went into all the detail that's on this page. From Lord Pumpkin himself. I mean, you have the crows and the vultures, pecking away at him, and then you have that weird ghoulish kind of figure there to the right of Lord Pumpkin. All the cemetery stones. It's just, there's so much going on, and I think I see that in a lot of Kyle Holtz's work. So I do like his work. I have, like you say, I think I have maybe 5 or 6 pieces by him, primarily cover pieces, actually.
No, I love his work too. It's super detailed, and yeah, he's an amazing inker. His compositions are crazy, like this one, but it just works. I mean, he's a guy who I could look at his work, every day and probably find something new and still admire it. He's just a great illustrator.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of great artists that have been in the business, but yeah, he's just one of those guys whose work really appeals to me too. There's a illustrator named Ray Troll who does, like, he was really big more like 20 years ago, like an Alaskan artist, but everything that guy drew I loved. It didn't matter what it was. He could be drawing a fish on a line, or whatever, some trying to draw some mythological creature, and I loved everything he did. And Holtz is kind of that same way. I can't wait to see the next piece, and I know I'm gonna find lots of artistic details within it that I really like.
Yeah, absolutely. I have also the other probably my second favorite piece by him. Oh, that might be my favorite. It's actually one of my featured pieces. Like I have a scarce magazine cover, and good luck finding it is scarce finding that magazine.
I saw that. Yeah, it's when and I'm like, what the heck is scarce?
Yeah, it was an
But
old magazine, and it was scarce. You know, it wasn't really widely distributed. About I think it was about comics. You know, and he did a cover that had like almost every character, like a lot of the mainstream characters that he
yeah,
had
I just had
worked.
to show
Yeah,
it because it's so darn cool. Come on, it's got Marvel and DC characters on this
a
thing.
lot of the characters he worked on, you know, he put on display here. And again, that's another appealing thing I think is just a cover that has so many different characters. Um, you know, I hazard to guess, like if you were going to say you're going to commission an artist, yeah, I'd like to commission you. Could you put like 14 characters, and how much would that cost me? Um, you know, so I think this was probably a
You
very
know how
good
it goes.
value.
11 by 17 base rate, $1,000, $250 for each additional character, and yeah, I know,
So this
but
is
that,
good
you know,
value.
that's a whole other conversation too. You know, the prices of commissions versus published pieces and
Yeah,
stuff. I mean, I think, you know, when an artist has already been paid for it, you know, there's all, and it's not like it's a discount, but you know, they've already made some money, so
right.
it's not going to be the same thing as a commission piece. But I saw this one earlier in your CAF, and I had a look at, you know, I wish I could zoom into it, Tom, because I like it that much. I think you know, the Vision, Scarlet Witch, Batman on here are fantastic. Guy Gardner, Cap. I mean, man, this is just one hell
Yeah.
of an artwork. I'm jealous.
Yeah,
because
well, it's one of probably here and there, like anybody else. I'll get messages through CAF asking if I'm interested in selling a piece, and I generally don't. Probably in all my years of collecting, I probably think I've sold maybe 5 or 6 pages out of the several hundred I have, and this is one that commonly, semi regularly, I get somebody reaching out asking if I'd be interested in selling it.
it's
I
it's
haven't.
understandable because, you know, he hasn't, you know, he's worked for a lot of more you know, not non-big two publishers, right?
Right.
So to see, I mean, he's done work for Marvel and DC, of course, but to have a piece like this, yeah, this is rare, super rare, and he's not going to have the time to do this as a commission for somebody. So yeah, so yes, you know, you can include me in somebody who would email you about that. Oh man, but so Paul Renaud, this is a cave woman illustration. So in your appropriately in your pinups gallery room.
Yeah, Paul Renaud. So this is an interesting. I put this one up because it's like such an isolated thing. So why did I buy this? So Paul Renaud, I think he's a great illustrator. I didn't really follow him much. I'd never read Cave Woman,
Hmm.
but when I saw this, to me it was like just the way he depicted the female form. It's not an easy thing to do in many cases. And it just when I looked at it, I said it was just everything about it in terms of the tones, the pose, the shape. It just really appealed to me. So it was one of those. I put this up just as an example of something that just I wasn't looking for it. It's not something that an artist I really followed that closely. It's not a book I read. It's not a character I followed, but I just saw the page and I just saw the piece and said, wow, that really looks great. And I wouldn't mind looking at that more. So I actually ended up just purchasing it.
No, the aim. I think we all you know, make decisions in that same way, right? You just see something that's appealing, and yep, you have no choice. That's
Right. Right.
there's you know, what is it? Everybody calls them squirrels, right? You see something that just you can't let you know, slip through your fingers when you see it, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, when I bought my first piece of artwork, it was kind of that in that same vein. I just saw something that I was like, man, I want to have that, and it's, you know, and that's been going on, you know, for the last, you know, 20 plus years. That same feeling when you see something.
Yeah.
So no, awesome.
But
So
no,
yeah,
it's a really good illustration, and even looks like the black background with the circle,
mhm.
depicting that jungle background. So I think it's all just like the way it would. It would just appeal to me on a number of levels.
All right, now this next one's interesting too, and let me go ahead and highlight that. This is by Gray Morrow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And it, you know, it says it's an ad, and but I'm not sure what. I guess I'm reading the description now. It says for Marvel subscriptions.
yeah. Because you can see on the barbell there, and it's not easy to see, but those little squares, they're like covers to Marvel
Ah,
comics. Um, and I think, I always liked Gray Morrow's work,
me too.
but didn't often see. And so one popped up, and I also thought the appeal is like an advertisement, like the original art. I had not had a piece of original art, and I think of all the ads that I used to see in like in the old days in the comics, look at all the ads, and I even remember in the comics they would always have like Hostess Twinkies and like they'd have an actual comic page, you know, with a hero and a villain, fighting over Hostess fruit pies or whatever. So I always was interested in the advertising art. So I thought this was an interesting one, and I don't know, his selection of attire is interesting. Um, and so again, I just as a painting by Gray Morrow, I like Gray Morrow's work, but also appealed to me as like saying, hey, a piece of
Right.
advertising.
No, I'm with you. I think that yeah, when those Dennis Kitchen auctions were going on, I loved seeing like the kitchen press ads images that he had used, and of all the things that he had in that auction, there was a lot of cool published underground work that was there. It was those like house ad style pieces, like this was the because they always use like the building that he published in or that they worked in as a. I'm like, if I was going to own anything, that's the thing I'd want, just
Yeah.
because it's historical. I
Mhm.
mean, and what we're doing is collecting historical pieces anyway. But you're right. I mean, whether it's a Hostess ad or a house ad for subscribing to comics, or uh, I don't know, a Bazooka Joe ad in a in a
Mhm.
bubblegum wrapper. I mean, those things are cool, man.
Yeah.
I totally, and I appreciate those as well. But this is funny. I mean, I've never seen this piece before. I mean, clearly it's been in your CAF for a long time, uh, but I've not seen it. But Morrow is one of those guys who I've always wanted to have a piece in my collection. There, because his work is solid, but it's like how do you pick the right piece, right? When
Right.
a lot
Right.
of the things he did don't fit into the characters you collect or the stories you collect. I mean, sometimes you just have to bite the bullet and pick a piece that just is a good representative piece of theirs. But no, you did well on this one. All right, Chris Ouellette says they're pleased as punch to be a part of CAF. That's what we love to hear, Chris. Marcus says I should get the Lois Lane pages by Morrow. Is that what? I'm not sure if that's what he means. Probably. Let's see here. Next up is a young Indiana Jones artwork by Mike. What is it? Mike Butkus? Yes.
Yeah, Buckus, yeah. So I just thought this was just interesting because it crosses a little bit, and it's another thing you mentioned. What other things I collect? I do also collect illustration art. I don't have a lot of illustration art pieces, and I don't have any of them, I think, except this one, um, up on CAF. But this was actually, so when that series, the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles, came out, that setting of him, of a young Indiana Jones joining the Belgian army during World War One. I think this one was set in Africa. This was actually the cover to the VHS tape, that was
Oh.
released. So, and in fact, I have it under, for anybody who's interested, I have it under the additional images for this. I do have the cover to the VH because it actually when I bought this, I think I got this at Hakes. When I bought this, it came with the VHS tape. I don't have a VCR to play it, but a working VCR that I don't think I still have a VCR. But it was actually the cover to the. So that's another interesting piece. This was paint. It's really illustration. It's fine art in my mind, but obviously it was done as a piece of production for pay. So now it's
Mhm.
classified as illustration art. But it was, I just liked it. I liked it, like everything about it, in terms of how he interposes different things from the episode, different kind of sequences from the episode in a cover. So yeah, it's the only time I've ever seen the original art to a VHS cover.
Very cool. I actually own the art to a VHS cover as well for a Doctor Who piece I
Yeah.
bought for my wife because she's a big Doctor Who fan, and I couldn't even tell you who the artist is. Unfortunately, I'm not looking at my calf, but yeah, that kind of stuff is cool, right? I mean, at the end of the day, um, to find like like in my case, like a published Doctor Who cover, or for, in a comic, or for you, an Indiana Jones cover.
Yeah.
And you remember, John Byrne would be pretty cool to have one of those or whatever. You can't afford those, so when something like this comes up, hey, and it's affordable, price is right, you go for it. Let's see here. Next piece. Oh, this is a pretty cool piece. And we're into some Human Torch now, right?
Okay, now we're moving on to the Human Torch part.
And it's Jim Lee as well.
Yeah. And this one, I have to tell you the acquisition story for this one, because if I were not a CAF premium member, I can tell you I would not own this piece.
Oh, wow.
And
fill me in.
Okay, I will. So going back, I'm going to say 15 years ago, roughly around 2010-ish, you guys did a premium member of the week feature kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so one week I was asked, hey, we'd like to feature as the premium member of this week. And what you do is send a series of questions that I answered, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you post it up as the answers to the question. So one of the questions was, as I recall, what would be your dream commission? And I answered that I would really, even though I'll probably never be able to get one, I'd love to get a commission of Jim Lee doing the Human Torch. So anyway, the feature went up, and a couple days later, I got an email from Scott Williams, who, of course, has inked so much of Jim Lee's work. And he said, I saw your little feature there on the premium members and the reference to the Jim Lee Human Torch Commission. And it got me thinking. I went and looked at my Fantastic Four pages, and sure enough, I had one that featured the Human Torch. And he asked if I would be interested. And he said he'd be willing to part with it if I'd be interested in purchasing it. And it took me about 2 seconds to hit the reply button on the email and say, yes, I would be interested in purchasing it. So we came to agreement, and that was that. And I bought the page. So again, that was not in any website. It was not published. It was not anywhere displayed. So he just had it in his own possession. So there we are, Bill. I will thank you.
That's great. Yeah, I forgot about that. We did do that for a long while, where we featured a premium member. Yeah, and we would send that out I think it was, at that time we were doing weekly emails.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. And obviously Scott Williams has been on CAF for a very long time, and so he would have seen that. And I'm glad he read it, right? We put a lot of content out there over the years, and you never know who's reading what, but that's a good feeling. I mean, that's one of the things I'm most proud of from working on CAF is just the idea that we've helped people find things that they wanted to buy, the friendships that they made. And I love hearing stories like that, because to be honest, up until we started doing these live streams, I didn't know all the cool things that CAF was doing for people. I mean, you just assume it, right? You assume
right.
You're doing the right things that make the community be happy, but I didn't hear stories like I love hearing this stuff. This is wonderful.
No, it was a great thing. And then I had a little dialogue with him back and forth. And so, and again, here we are. And it's like, if not certainly one of, if not the favorite Human Torch page I have. I mean, there's so much to like about this page too. I mean, of course, the feature of the torch charging forward in that larger panel. But I also like the way that little vertical panel on the right, with the concerned Reed and Sue and some of the minions in the background.
Yeah, it's a very interesting layout. I can say I've never seen one quite like that. It's because essentially it's just layering over the top of that a full bigger than half flash of Johnny there. That's great.
And then the mole man, using his staff there, and torch crashing to the ground on those bottom two panels. So a lot of action on the page. So you get a lot on the page, but you still get that major big image of the Human Torch, charging forward. So again, that's one that I will never part with for certain.
That's wonderful. Congrats on that one. And is it signed by Jim? I see it's signed by Scott. Worst case scenario, you got to get Jim to sign it.
I'll try to catch up with him.
He probably wrote that at the top. That looks like his handwriting.
Yeah.
So that's close enough to a signature. But hey, John, what can you say about this one? This is somebody was just saying, where's the flame on the last one? Well, here you go. You get the Human Torch.
Flame on, yes.
Flame on, right?
Yeah, the John Byrne page. Now this is the first Human Torch page I ever bought.
Really?
Yeah, and it was. I think it was very soon after it was actually published. So we're talking about dealers. So I went to a Boston show, and this is probably maybe the second or third show I went to where there was a comic art dealer. And this is interesting. You had two big stacks, and I wish I had. I could think of all the pages I could buy if I had those kind of resources at that time. He had on the right a stack of John Byrne pages, and on the left a stack of Rob Liefeld pages. And at that time, Liefeld was like the hot guy. I mean, he had a bunch of he had some Youngblood pages, and I was looking through both stacks. And I said, well, what do I get, a Byrne page or a Liefeld page? And I liked them both. I mean, Byrne I'd liked for a longer period of time, but I know Liefeld's controversial, but I actually do like his art. And the Liefeld pages were priced considerably higher than the Byrne pages. So I said, well, let me get a John Byrne page. And I was flipping through, and I saw, and that was at the point where I was considering, the character collecting. And I'm like saying, would I like to focus on a character, and which would it be? And so, like, my two favorite books as a kid were Fantastic Four and Amazing Spider-Man. In the Fantastic Four, my favorite character was the Torch, being the young, brash character. And I think as a youngster, I would, you kind of associate with that. But I also love Spider-Man. But then I thought, well, Spider-Man, there'll be more supply out there. There's going to be a lot more selection, but there's probably a lot of Spider-Man collectors. It'll be a little bit more difficult to find Human Torch pages, but I think there's probably less Human Torch collectors. So I decided that I thought I might go with Human, and this was the thing that spurred me into the Human Torch collection. Was in that stack of John Byrne pages, I found one that had a really nice image of the Human Torch. And again, Byrne had been one of my favorite artists. I mean, like anybody else, I absolutely loved his work on X-Men. I wouldn't miss any one of those books when Claremont and Byrne were working on them. So again, it's a nice page. It's obviously the third panel is the seller on that one.
It is, but yeah, the fourth panel is great too. I mean, just because that silhouette is like, well, it's classic. A lot of comic artists, but even in the pose and just the way the feet are drawn, you name it, it screams John Byrne from that era. And that's awesome. It's really, really nice. And I just left a comment on your piece, so in real time. So no, that's cool. And that's an interesting dilemma that you had. Even at that point in time, I would have thought that the Byrne pages would have been a little bit more pricey than Rob's. But it's probably at a con. Maybe at that moment Liefeld was hotter, right? I mean, he probably was in more demand, and so they priced him accordingly at that show.
Right. But, it was. I think it was really at the peak of. I think like Youngblood had just he'd had his success on New Mutants and X-Force, and Youngblood had just come out, and I think that was kind of the peak of his popularity. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't like substantially, but it was. They were somewhat more expensive. This page back then, I didn't pay a lot of money for it, to be perfectly frank, but it was priced accordingly at the time.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a great place to start the Torch collection, like I said.
Yeah, that was the number one Torch page. Yeah.
Amazing. So this is one we're familiar with.
Yeah, this I bought from some guy. So at CAF Live, the last CAF Live event, I did have my alerts set because, my goodness, when I looked at how many storefronts basically were there, I said, I'll never get through all these, but I did lean heavily on my want list. And sure enough, this page came up. I had bought in years ago, I think 2 or 3 Hitch FF pages of that same time frame that had the Torch on it, but nothing like this in terms of a full splash. So when I saw that, at the CAF. That was that was my major purchase actually in the last CAF Live event. And yeah, it's a great image. I like the way he treats it. And difference, like most people will have the torch completely in flame. You don't even wouldn't recognize him as Johnny Storm per se, but this one, he has the flame, but you see him also as Johnny Storm flying through the. And I also like the details of the city. I love the cars and the people below.
And it's a big piece of art too.
Oh yeah, that's like, oh yeah, I noticed that he does work in that large. Yeah, it's funny because for the pieces I have by him, I have the larger portfolio
Yeah,
because
you have to.
so and then I have some older pages too that are large. So yeah, I mean he does, but I believe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's the format he pretty much works in, right? Is the
Yeah, he prefers to. Yeah, he's more comfortable drawing large, and he says he's faster drawing large. Now, I'm sure the inkers probably don't feel that way, but but that's the way he likes it. That that size and scale, and I don't know. Hey, if it works for him, and the inkers don't mind. I guess that's fine. But it makes it more complicated to ship, obviously, and like you said,
yeah.
you have to have an oversized portfolio for it. But yeah, this was a good one. I liked seeing the splash, because we had to organize. There was a lot of FF art, and so going through it all, I had to really organize it and stuff. But this one was just always really striking and fun,
Yeah,
and
I mean,
yeah.
if you're a Human Torch fan, you can't really pass that one up.
No, and we wouldn't be talking today if you didn't buy this artwork. So it has that going for it as well. And that was Curry inks on that one. But now next up, all right.
So this was like the completely different take, right, on the Human Torch. So there was a Human Torch series in which they had Scotty Young, I guess, really fairly early in his career, did the covers for several of them, and yeah, it's just I just put it because it's such a whole different style,
Mm-hmm.
and just kind of even the weird anatomy, like with those large hands, always leaning back, and in the forefront you see the large hands. So, and again, nice cityscape. But again, it's just because it's so different than any other really interpretation of the torch I've seen. And I think that's one of the great things about character collecting is to see how you could take a character who basically has that same image, like the Human Torch flaming flamed on is a pretty standard image, and yet you can see how different artists approach it so differently. And I think from character collecting, I always like that. Just like you can line up a line of Human Torch character pieces, and they're so different. So it's always fun to see those different interpretations, I think.
Right. I mean, fire can be drawn in many different ways, and this fits Scotty Young's style, right? I mean, at least at that point in his career. Yeah, I like this piece too, and it's cool. And I don't think anybody else would draw flames like that, but Scotty at this point. So that's neat. CJ says, cool. Yeah, no. Anyway, good and a nice cityscape on this one too, and even the colored version looks pretty good. We don't always say that, but you have the published image up there as well. Yeah, a nice looking cover. And an issue 1 cover too, right?
Yeah, it was issue 1, yes. Yeah. What's interesting too about Young's covers, I had to be careful with too when I started collecting, was some of them they were inked on the pencils, but there are some pages out there of the covers of I forget which ones that they're like the pencils were done and then the blue line copy was inked. So you have to be careful with those, because in one case I thought the inked copy wasn't original, and it was in a sense an inked original, but I mean it wasn't. The pencils were separate. And in fact,
yeah, that's a challenge. A lot of I think when people started doing that originally, not everyone wanted to, even thought to keep the two pieces together, because they were still really thinking of them as production art, and the pencils were this, the inks were that, and that's unfortunate, right? Especially when you know that you own something, and then the other page still exists. It's challenging to come to grips with it. Unless you knew it going into it, right? It's yeah, that's tough.
Yeah, and I actually have one sad story to that. Is one of the other covers, I had the pencils. I forget which one, and because I have I think 3 or 4 young Human Torch covers, and I found the inker who had the inks, and I purchased those. So I said, "Oh, I'm going to reunite the pencil. I have the pencils, not many things." And Federal Express destroyed the package, so gone forever.
Right. Well, now you know you have the only
Yeah,
living existing version of that cover. That
yeah,
sucks.
yeah.
Did you actually get it all mangled and everything?
No, they just didn't even deliver it through, and the sender had to put in the insurance claim, but
Wow.
what ended up happening, I think I ended up just swapping it out for I don't think I have this one up on cap, but I got a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles cover, which was priced the same. So I said, all right, I'll take that. So, but yeah,
Yeah,
no, I never even saw it. They just claimed that had been destroyed in transit, and
that sucks. Sorry,
yeah.
I was looking at this other piece, but yeah, no, that's unfortunate when something like that happens. Luckily, I have not ever ordered something where it came in. I've had them where the packages are mangled, but the art's still good,
Mhm.
on the inside. But I have not had it to the point where you had to file a claim. But of course, I've had a lot of friends have stories like that, right, where things like that have happened, and even in some cases where the art ends up turning up a year later. You just never know. But such is our hobby. So this is a little bit switching gears. It's a Strange Tales page from issue
Yeah,
118 with and it's all Dick Ayers too, I think, pencils
yeah,
and
it
ink.
is. Yes, and it's there you go for Scotty Young, right? To to circa 1962 or whenever that issue came out, and that was when the Human Torch, yes, he was the headliner of Strange Tales and had solo stories. And this is very early appearance of the Wizard. If you look at the Wizard today, or later on, he was very very different in appearance than here. But yeah, I like it because this is, of course, this is I have one of the Strange Tales page, so I'm not sure which is the oldest, but this is, if not, it's the oldest. It's the second oldest uh, by year page that I own by Dick Ayers, and again, an early Strange Tales of this Torch, and I always liked the Stan Lee trying to do like the hip teenage dialogue type thing. So like in the last panel, the Torch says something like, because the Wizard's convinced that these bullets, the Torch would never be able to melt them, but he does in that last panel. And the Torch says something like, my near nova flame can melt anything except a chick's cold heart. Um, so
There's a lot of influencers in the comic book hobby that try to talk like young teen hipsters. I think Stanley did it better. People, but yeah, I'm looking at your calf. You do this is the older of the two Dick Ayers Strange Tales, but the other page is really nice too, though, and it's got a flame on it too.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, so
There's
I was able to get, and I'm glad I was able. That's one of the things I don't regret, was I was able to buy, like this was probably bought at the same time I could have bought that Kirby page, and I bought this, and I'm glad I did, because might not have had another opportunity, because they're not that, those early Strange Tales pages are not that plentiful. So
No, they don't come up that often, and people who own them prefer to keep them in their collection. But here, I wanted to show the other page too because it's nice, and it does have a flame on in the fifth panel.
yeah,
Classic 6-panel layout, which I love, and yeah, no, this is really nice too. But yeah, to get the flame on, that's
yeah,
again, I mean, what more can you ask for? This was from issue. The other one was 118, and this is 127.
okay,
So.
right, yeah,
Man, yeah, no, hey, anytime you get pieces that are from that era, it's just fun to have, and see and know that it made it through hell to get to you at the end of the day, that it's still out there and looks that great.
yeah, yeah. Well, Dick Ayers, I mean, I think, because again, Strange Tales Kirby did some, but then then Ayers did it, and of course, that's one of the, I wouldn't mind getting a Strange Tales page by Jack Kirby to bring that complete. But yeah, I actually did like. I mean, Dick Ayers. Again, another one of those folks who just did a lot of work. I remember I used to like. Actually, I liked. I got into it one time, the early issues of Sergeant Fury and his Howling Commandos,
Hmm.
and Dick Ayers did a lot of those.
He did, yeah, definitely.
A lot of those, and I remember reading those as a kid as well.
Yeah, those are fun. Now, we're going to shift gears on this next one to one of my favorite artists, Mr. Frank Brunner. This one is, man, if you're getting a Brunner, you want to get him. Man Thing is ideal, and you
Yeah,
have him fighting the Human Torch.
Yeah,
So
so I think
this is
he was
great.
kind of odd to him, the request. It was so he was doing a while ago, commissions, and I get them directly from him. I
Mhm.
communicated directly with him. Um, and I said, gee, and I thought to myself, Bruno, I like to say, I want to get Man Thing, but maybe I could bring in the Human Torch with it. And so uh, I asked him if he wouldn't mind doing the Human Torch fighting Man Thing, and he was fine with that. And I remember when he sent it back when he sent me the scan of it, when he completed it, he titled it Human Torch Puts the Burn on Man Thing.
I know Robert Berman just beat me to it because I was waiting for the moment. Whoever knows fear burns at the touch. So, yep, exactly. Yeah, this is such a nice. I mean, it's awesome. I mean, this might. I mean, I just love Bruner's pencil work. All right, and this Man Thing is incredible. The composition is great. That tree in the background. I mean, this thing. Your eye just keeps going round and round on this one, Tom.
Yeah, no, I
This
love the
this is
piece,
amazing.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah, I did have it digitally colored as well, just for the purpose. I would just like to see the effect. So the which is in the traditional images for those who might be interested. But yeah, I think as a pure piece of pencil work, it's just amazing. And because I love his interpretation of Man Thing, I really like his Human Torch. And again, like you said, that kind of gloomy, swampy background really adds to
Yeah, it
the whole
does.
thing.
It's but
And like
Bruner's.
the torch's flame, kind of lighting up the
Oh
the
yeah, well the
background
way
itself.
the light you can feel the lighting he's done on the tree, just the way with
Right.
this with those wavy lines. He's you just feel the heat off the piece. It's just that great. Jeff Wedding wrote that if we ever have OAX cocktail names, we'll have a Flaming Man Thing as one of them now. Uh, this yeah, I love this piece. This is awesome. Frank's such he's a cool guy. He's got a long tenure in comics. His Doctor Strange work is is some of my favorite. But yeah, he drew Man Thing, anything horror related. Him and Plug were like for me neck and neck. I just love their work,
Hmm.
and yeah,
Yeah,
I'm envious of this piece. I love it.
yeah. I was always a great fan of his, and so when the opportunity, and I'd say that like when those opportunities came of artists I really liked and read their work and so forth, I always kind of those are the first I jumped at. So that when Frank Bruner, made that available, other people like I say, G. Cole and Mike Grell, again, those kind of use hesitate to use the word legendary, but legendary artists. I mean, really folks whose work I admired so much that to
Hmm.
be able to get them to draw a piece for me, I think it was just it's almost like I'm not worthy.
Yeah, no, I do. I really like this one a lot, Tom. It's beautiful. Oh man. Okay, so how do we top this piece? What do we got next? This is oh well,
Oh,
Hembeck. I mean, we all love
right.
Hembeck. So
Back to Fred Hembeck, yes, and so I don't know if he still does it, but this was a while ago. Again, this is
he doesn't do these anymore.
okay.
No.
Used to do the classic cover redos was the thing, and um, so I said, I'm going to get Fred Hembeck to do a Human Torch, and I kind of flipped through, I zoomed through some Fantastic Four covers that I had remembered, and I saw this one, and I said, this is the one I'll get for him that will really add to my Human Torch collection, and it's just so great. That he does everything. I mean, the lettering, the comics code, the price, the corner box, um, and then of course you get a lot of characters here, and he did change kind of the facial expressions from the original comic, but you get all that kind of framed of all those characters. The flaming, fighting mad Human Torch, and then the hieroglyphics on the wall. Yeah, I just think it's just a great piece.
Yeah, no, I agree. He did these and sold a lot of them on eBay and what have probably like
Mhm.
between 7 and 10 years ago. And I think he just got burned out from doing
Yeah,
them. They were great though. I mean, and I do. I love this one. The Inhumans all look fantastic, drawn by him. And yeah, what can you say? These are so hard to come by, and he just isn't doing them any longer. I've done like 4 sales shows with him, and I think he did one on one on a sketch card size. You know, he's done it maybe one or two. I know, no, that's not true because I remember Marcus actually picked up. He did an FF cover as well. I forget which one, but again, he's only going to do them rarely. You know, when the mood strikes him. So no, this is great.
Yeah, I like Karnak's expression, particularly on the lower right there.
Yeah,
Um,
you know, that's the one. You know, out of all the Inhumans, that's the one. Him and Black Bolt are the ones I keep looking back and forth at because it's just, you know, you want Black Bolt to be saying something. That's
yeah,
what I want. But Karnak, he just looks like I'm at the bottom.
yeah.
Why?
I mean, so when I picked this one, and then he ended up doing it when I remember when he communicated me when he sent it, he said he really had a lot of fun doing this one. So I'm glad that he enjoyed it as well. But yeah, so I think, but again, I just the level of detail. If you pull out the comic, and there's just like everything is there. Yeah, even approved by the Comics Code, I think is a nice touch.
Yeah, Fred is amazing. I even like Reed Richards on this one. He's it's just
Yeah, I love the facial expressions on these.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's you know, that was comparable to the Brunner Man thing. All right, and then next up we have Bruce Timm. There we go. Look at this.
Yeah, just character design. I probably just lose because I'm a real fan of Bruce Timm's work, and I don't think I have any published pages by him, but I have a couple of character design Human Torch pages, and I just like his interpretation. And this one you get both Johnny and Flamed Off and Flamed On. So yeah, it's just one of those pieces that, and I can't remember where I picked this one up. It might have been an eBay purchase, or maybe I don't know. I just can't recall because I've had it for a while. But yeah, and I do sense that you know, he always, I think, enjoyed drawing Fantastic Four characters. So maybe that comes out here.
Oh yeah, I mean anything a little bit Kirby. I mean, you know, Bruce Timm's work is exaggerated, fists in your face. You know, I think I can't see how he couldn't really enjoy drawing an FF team. But yeah, no, this is a good one.
Yeah,
I love
like
the lower left image where he's screaming.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
I was
great.
just about, you beat me to it. I was about to say that lower left image, I think, is the my favorite part of that piece. The other one I have by him is just well, not just, but it's the Human Torch Flamed On, so that doesn't have the Johnny images as well.
And that's in your CAF as well.
Yes.
Awesome. Let's see. I think we have two more pieces. Yeah. So next up, we have this Julius Abrera piece from Next Comic Art. How'd you pick this one up?
This was a recent purchase. I actually got this. This was one of my other purchases through CAF Live. So I saw that Next Comic Art had, and its storefront on Comic Art Live had a series of commissions, and I saw that Julius was doing 2 character commissions. So I do have one of my, I kind of divided my Human Torch commissions into different categories. Like one is like solo torch, but then I have a Human Torch versus gallery. So I have the Human Torch fighting, in most cases, a Fantastic Four villain, but in other cases, other heroes like Iceman and so forth. And I actually like Julius's work. In terms of looking at his galleries before, and I think he really did a great job. I just, you say I'm going to get a 2 character commission. You don't know exactly, to what level you're going to get it. And I didn't necessarily expect this detail. This goes from like border to border. Every millimeter of this board has art on it. It goes right to the edge, and again, everything about it. I liked his depiction of the torch. I think the background, more detailed background, the tones, the grays. Again, I just wanted, if you're just going to doing commissioning, this is one of my most recent commissions. But I think, as I say, I was very happy with how Julius was able to do this one.
No,
and Terex, it's good because I said pick an FF villain, and I always, sometimes I get repeats, and it was great that he picked a Fantastic Four villain I've never had any art of, like the Human Torch fighting. I have a couple. I have like several Doctor Dooms, Human Torch against Doctor Doom.
Of course.
But I hadn't had one against Terax, so he, by sheer coincidence, he picked out an FF villain that I had not represented in my CAF gallery. So I was happy about that as well.
Well, it turned out beautiful. I mean, I love Perreira's work, and we've seen a lot through the mystery sketches, and we've done a lot of sales with Jiggy on Next Comic Art, and yeah, I mean, this is great. And and being edge to edge, there's just something about that, especially when it's tonal, right? You could have a line art piece that touches the edges, but when it's just filled like that, it feels different, to have a piece of art done that way. But yeah, this is a keeper. Uh, our last piece is a beauty as well, and this is by Brian Haberlin, who's going to OAX, everybody, and we had on the show on a CAF update not too long ago, and I've seen his work before, but I got to see, and I never really stopped in his booth, and I know he's been at San Diego before, but this year I did, and just getting to see a lot of his I mean, he's amazing. I mean, this is probably watercolor and gouache, but he has a Kickstarter going on right now that has some amazing pieces in it, more kind of fine art style, but just beautiful. And I mean, look at the way he's done Johnny here. I mean, this is such a cool image.
Yeah. So this is actually one of the most recent purchases. And I happened to spot this on CAF, and he had done actually, I think, each of the Fantastic Four, and I saw this one, and to me, it was like, and I mentioned earlier that I do have some like fine art, portrait art, and this really, to me, falls into that level. It's like almost fine art, and it's it to me. So I look at this and I think, well, what is my image of Johnny Storm? I think that would be the definitive image to me of Johnny Storm, what I would think of. So I just really like it. It was like, so you get the the real nice portrait piece, and you get him partially flaming on, which I think adds a lot. That if it had just been just Johnny, period. And this one also kind of reminds me, probably others would probably say no, but I kind of almost reminds me of the most recent depiction in the Fantastic Four most recent movie, First Steps.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, I was actually going to say it was Chris Evans, and that goes back to one of the earliest questions that I didn't highlight from Marcus, where he said, "Do you prefer Chris Evans, Michael B. Jordan, or Joseph Quinn as Torch?" And I guess you're right. It's kind of like, to me, it's like right in the middle between Chris Evans and the most recent iteration of Johnny. But that's the cool thing. Brian has that fine art background, and so bringing his talents to like the Marvel universe or just characters that we all love, you're going to end up with something really unique. And right here, I mean, his just his detail in those eyes alone. I mean, he's amazing.
Yeah, the expression is on the face is just to capture that is really great. And by the way, Joseph Quinn would be my preference.
There you go, Joseph Quinn. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I think it was more about the character in the most recent movie. I felt that the Torch had a little bit more depth in terms of the character than in the Chris Evans. I didn't see the Michael B. Jordan. I can't speak to that one. But the Chris Evans, I think to use a Seinfeld reference is, I think Chris Evans portrayed him more as the Mimbo, character, and I felt that in the most recent movie, that the character had some more depth to him in terms of his role in the whole storyline.
Well, I would agree with you there. It was cool seeing the FF on the screen, with the Evans movies, but yeah, this last FF movie was more to my liking in terms of story and the characterizations and everything. So, but again, congrats on picking this one up.
Yeah, this is one I think I'm going to get. I don't frame a lot of my pieces, but this one I think I am going to frame.
Well, I think I remember seeing the Sue Storm piece. Maybe that might have been when I had Brian on. I think he sent the Johnny and Sue images as examples of his work. And the Sue piece was beautiful too.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that one's sold. I know that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, he's somebody. His commission list is open. I might end up getting something from him because I mean, I mean, I just can't imagine what he'd do with a Thor, right? I mean,
Yeah, right.
I'll pass Cyclops on there because, you know, I know I'm not going to get, you know, I mean, just when you look at a portrait like that, right? And, you know, I'd probably be getting like a bust painting.
Yeah.
Thor just makes so much sense over doing Cyclops. So, you know, Visor just kills it. Why have Brian do a piece like that
Right,
when he
right.
can, you know, he'll kill it with a Thor.
I think you do a great Thor. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, there, I think that seals the deal. I'm gonna have to do it now. Um, but Tom, this is fun. This was a
Yeah.
lot of fun. you know, again, I'm glad you picked up that piece of art, you know, through the site and or through Comic Art Live in May, and you know, we got to put this thing together. So this is fun, and I hope to run. You know, I don't get up to New England that often anymore, so. You know, unfortunately, probably any shows that you're at, we won't cross paths for a while. But if you ever get down to Heroes in the summer, that's a good show. I don't know if you've been down to that one, but that one's a fun one where a lot of collectors get together. Um, but yeah, do you go to well? What shows do you frequent?
Now I rarely go.
Don't
I
you?
haven't been to a show since before COVID.
Ah,
As I mentioned earlier, as I get older, I don't have the patience or the stamina to stand up for hours and stand in lines and so forth. I would like to get out again. But I would go to Boston. In fact, there was I did recall that there was I was like that some of the CAF folks got together at the most recent Boston
that is true. Yeah.
show, and I was deliberating whether maybe to get up to that show, but I just couldn't make it work. But yeah, so I'm pretty much mostly buying online. I would like to get back. I mean, you know, February in New England's not fun, so maybe Orlando would be a better place to
Yeah.
be
With
in February.
you would be you know, you'd like the story you said earlier about, you know, thumbing through artwork beside somebody else who's looking at it. I mean, that's the cool thing about OEX is that there's not one person in the room that you don't have something in common with. You can literally start a conversation up with anybody, and you know, and there's just, you know, you're already friends from the get-go. That's the cool thing about it for me, and I'm sure for everybody who goes there. But yeah, we'd love to have you come down, whether it's this year or next. But that was the idea. You know, we put the show not in con season, and then put it in the wintertime when you'd like to think people would want to get out of the north. And you know, for me coming from Cleveland, where I lived, you know, like 55 years, yeah, I was I knew that if there was a show that I would travel to, it would be that one in the winter. Um, all right. Well, I mean, again, Tom, this was a lot of fun, and again, I've added you to my watch gallery list so I can see the pieces you pick up. You clearly, you know, you got really good taste, and I think that there's a lot of crossover in the artists that you know that I collect, and probably a lot of the other, you know, the fans who've been watching tonight, I collect as well. So anybody who's premium, I would encourage them to follow your CAF and, you know, and get a regular update. You just never know what Tom might post one day to the next.
Well, thank you, Bill. It's been a lot of fun, and thank you for having me. And of course, thank you for all you do on CAF. It's just a great asset to the hobby, and I get no end of enjoyment out of it.
Well, I appreciate hearing that. So thank you, Tom. And so everybody, as always, we appreciate you hanging out with us tonight. We hope you enjoyed the show, and you know, we'll be back at it again tomorrow with a Dueling Dealers episode. But if you did not see the Jesse Lonergan interview earlier today that Matt Sardo and you know, put on the channel at 3 o'clock, you should check it out. It was very entertaining. I watched it actually before it was released, and Jesse's a great artist and somebody who, if you're not familiar with his work, I would strongly encourage everybody to at least check out what he's doing. He's doing some of the most crazy page layouts that I've ever seen that are phenomenal. I mean, absolutely beautiful. And you know, he's one of my favorite artists that are out there today. So check that out. Again, Tom, thanks.
Thank
Everybody
you.
else, good night.